MUSEintheden, where we are a source of inspiration by using our experiences, our knowledge, and our voices to empower women to move with intent. In today's show, we're going to be discussing the stigma as it's related to mental health.
Hi, I'm Michelle, la entrenadora.
Hi, I'm Dr. Uchen of the DR.
Hi, I'm Sherelle, the socially conscious social worker.
And I'm Dr. Evie Taylor, AKA the People's Professor. So you all know we've been talking a lot about mental health ever since Simone Biles withdrew from some of her events at the Olympics. And she received a lot of backlash. We talked about this, people saying that she wasn't a good role model anymore. She was teaching children to quit, that she was a quitter. I even heard that she was a disgrace to her country, that she was not mentally tough. And when I was hearing all these things and all the negative things, it was making me think about, growing up in sports and as an athlete, how mental health is viewed in sports culture. You couldn't say that you had anxiety, even if it was performance anxiety or depression or anything that got in the way. If you had any mental health issues that prevented you from performing, you were considered weak. So you were shamed. You couldn't admit those things because you're soft, you're weak, you're not a good athlete.
Right.
Coaches, you might not start, you might lose your position. And so when I think about that, it's not just sports. I think about our communities, like how we grew up, and it's the same thing in our communities. If somebody was to say they're depressed, oh, you're not depressed, you're just lazy, you're making up excuses. We don't have time for that, just suck it up. Right. And that's kind of, what we get a lot. Is that what you heard growing up or what you've experienced?
Yeah, as an athlete for me, it was always about being mentally tough. You're not hurting, you're not in pain. I mean, it wasn't just mental toughness, it was physical toughness, right? Oh, you can play on that ankle, right? And yeah, like you said, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up. And then, my children are athletes, and I found myself early on saying stuff like that. And I actually reversed course when I saw the impact that it had on them. Like they wouldn't express, but I knew something was going on with them, but they didn't want to be seen as babies or weak, right? I mean, I'm going to be honest. I had to get on my husband, Eddie, because what he would say, just about them being tough and being able to work through the pain, or it's okay. And this anyway, yeah, I had to reverse course because I saw it. Like I could clearly see what it was doing. I don't know what it did to me. I mean, I really don't know what it did to me. I'm sure I screwed up or whatever, but I could see it in my children.
Yeah. I think that the way I saw it, I was an athlete as well. And I stopped after high school because I felt like college would be even more extreme. And I ran track. I ran track from elementary school all the way up to high school. And and I had a lot of anxiety. That gunfight, and I was a sprinter, right? So if you have a bad start, right, your race could be like all over, right? So I didn't want to participate in a college life because I didn't like that pressure, and I knew it was just building and building and building and building, and I didn't like it, and so I was conscious about it. And I, like with my daughter, she didn't run track, but she was a dancer. So even with that, her dances were tough. And, when she said enough, I pulled her out because I was very sensitive to it. So even before Simone Biles, it was Naomi Osaka. And I remember how shamed she was, like when they had the news, when she had the news speech, and and she put her head down. My heart ached for her.
Yeah,
my heart ached for her. She just pulled this cap down, and I just wanted to just hug her, like, oh my God, like you could see the pain on her. But I heard, that Simone Biles, it was something else, because I think that she's like ADHD, and they were saying that like her medication had a lot to do with that because it was listed as one of the medications that she couldn't have in order to perform. So I think they took that away from her, and then so she has to perform without taking her medication. So that was a part of her focus and everything else. And so that had a lot to do with that.
Well, yeah, because she was saying she was having these racing thoughts. Well, it only makes sense if you take her medication away, she's gonna have these thoughts and she can't focus and process.
Well, a big problem is that people see these elite athletes and the expectations are way up. They're supposed to be perfect. And just like with all of us and children coming up in a sport or in school, you're supposed to be perfect, the pressure, right? So then when you feel the pressure and then it just, you know, it's like getting to you and then you just want to take a step back or you feel a certain kind of way, then it's like, well, what's wrong with you? But that's normal. So it's like, people don't look at it as normal, but really it is. It's like you said, Evie, the stigma, and maybe people say you're weak, you're crazy. What is wrong with you?
What is wrong with you? I don't know, I think I've shared this probably with Evie before, but like the mental games that my coach played in high school, and I was an all-state athlete, but he was very mental. And I remember, and I was, I guess, 17, and I remember conscientiously thinking, I'm not going to let anyone have that type of control over me. I'm not going to do that. And like you said, I have friends today that say to me, you wasted your talent. You wasted your talent. But I don't know what made me think, but I didn't take any scholarships. And it wasn't about the pressure, because I don't think it's it's pressure, but it's having someone, like, it plays a mind game on you. It's mental. It's as if it's not you in control of you. And I felt like I had to be in control of me. And I'm almost certain that's how Simone Biles felt. I'm almost certain that's how Naomi Osaka felt. At some point, you got to take that control, or you will. I felt like I would just go crazy, right? Like, whatever that means.
But so think about this. So, you know, we're just talking about athletes right now. Right. But let's just kind of broaden it up. You know, for some reason you were concerned about your mental health, even if you didn't know what it was then. Yeah. You know, you saying that you wanted to have some sense of control. You knew for your mental health, it was best for you not to compete at the collegiate level. And so did you, Sherelle. So even if you didn't know it was mental health, or you're thinking about mental health, that's what was happening. Right. But let's take a step back and think about all these children that have mental health issues, but they're not getting the help that they need because of shame to admit what's going on. Or maybe they do go to their parents, and their parents, they feel like it's going to be a reflection on them, like bad parenting. You know, my child has X, Y, and Z because I was a bad parent. We look at children like they're depressed. Oh, parents must have done something wrong, right? And so then the parents feel a sense of shame, and then they don't go and get help. But what I want to inform people of is that a lot of people, even though we're not talking about it, a lot of people have mental health illnesses, right? And so 1 in 5 Americans have some sort of mental health issues, 1 in 5. So if there's one more person on here, one of us would have some mental health issues, right? And then to take a step further, maybe 1 in 4 of us does, maybe 2 in 4 of us does. But in saying that, you know, we got to begin to normalize it and talk about it, because if people get help, they can have a better quality of life. And
so what defines mental health issues? Because, like, for instance, this past 18 months, when I was in the house, I know my emotions were going up and down, and like I felt different. I didn't feel good. So, like, is that a mental health issue? Like, see, so I mean, anybody's capable of getting
absolutely. And absolutely. It's okay. So mental health, like diagnosed mental health, is kind of one thing. And then, like you said, I mean, Michelle, then there's this anxiety, which is still diagnosed, but it's normally situational, right? And you don't really have, you're able to, you have coping skills that you've developed over your lifetime that get you through it without, that doesn't lead you to like high anxiety where
so there's like different levels.
I mean, yeah, and there are different levels. And again, like, I mean, not getting all technical, but like for us with COVID, everybody started off with adjustment disorder, right? I'm just saying, right? Adjustment issues, right? Because it was a whole different life, right? But if you were someone that has other mental health issues, then you didn't have the coping skills, right? And that took you to a whole other, I mean, beyond. I mean, and even some people now, it's just, I mean, it's what I see like every day in clinic, because even though COVID isn't, I mean, it's still, I mean, no, it's still horrible, but people are still in their homes, recluse. They're like, they won't leave. They're nervous about even being around anybody. And it gets to a point to where it's not healthy, but nobody talks about it. But it's, I'm not saying it's a normal thing, right, y'all? But it's a normal, I would expect people to have trouble adjusting. You expect that.
Well, let's just say this, you know, Michelle, like you're saying that maybe you weren't your norm during COVID. So we've seen an increase in depression or depressive symptoms. Mm-hmm. So maybe some things like, you know, you felt like you had a sad mood more days than not. You know, maybe you were tearful and didn't know why. Maybe there was a lack of energy and, you know, sometimes you just wanted to lay around all day and didn't have the energy to get up. You know, you just felt like you were in a depressed mood. And some people might say, you know, they were in a funk. You know, that might be how they, because there's a stigma with saying they were feeling depressed, but there's not a stigma with saying I was in a little funk, right? So, you know, we got to look at the words and things. But all those things are some depressive symptoms. And so a lot of that, I think a lot of people had experienced some depressive symptoms during COVID, right? Yeah. Feeling alone and isolated, not able to think and concentrate and focus, right?
Yeah. I was going to say that you know, whenever I teach, and I always tell, because I'm teaching, you know, soon to be social workers. And so I equate it with a physical illness, right? I'm like, we've all had like a stomach ache or something, right? And they go, yeah. I'm like, so you've had a physical illness. You've all felt anxious about a test, right? So you've had a mental illness. And so what that is, there are some that are more chronic, right? Like schizophrenia, bipolar. And then there are some that are situational, like what Uchenna says, right? But it doesn't, so we've all experienced it to some degree or not. I've had, you know, anxiety attacks right before a final, I can remember, right? So, and when we put it in that perspective, it normalizes it and it makes it more comfortable for people to talk about. Because just like you can say, I had a stomach ache, that was a physical illness. And then someone who has, you know, cancer, that's more chronic. Same thing. You may have had a you know, temporary situation, or you can have something more chronic. And that's the way I look at it. And so I think, Uchenna, you're right. We've all at least have had adjustment disorder to the pandemic. So even my posting just recently, I was saying COVID, right, was natural disasters, man-made disasters, you know, institutional racism that constantly keeps you on PTSD, all of that sometimes it's overwhelming. So I'm gonna tell you right now, out of the four, and the fifth one ain't even here. Right now, I'm going through something.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say this, how the ignorance is real. When you say mental versus physical illness, right? If you have a chronic illness like diabetes, you would never take away someone's diabetic medication, right? You don't take away their medication. Even when they have a slip up, you give them medication. But in mental health illnesses, you're looking to wean them off medication. Now, granted, there are certain conditions where you can get, you over time, you are better able to cope, but the mindset of, if I'm on this medication, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
Right? And that's the mindset. And you even providers, professionals have that mindset. So you talk about it being a stigma. If it's a stigma within that profession, imagine, I mean, I'm not saying that this happens all the time, but imagine how people are made to be, how you can feel when you see someone, you talk to someone and they're constantly trying to make you better than you are, if that makes any sense, and hurry and rush you through what you're dealing with. And that's what parents do to children. I mean, we try, you feel better, come on, you're not sad. I mean, it's rushing you through because that stigma somehow, some way makes people uncomfortable, right? You're uncomfortable when you talk about mental health, like as if because you're schizophrenic or because you're bipolar, you're more prone to do something, which is not true. I don't know the statistics, but it's actually not true, right? But all these stigmas just add up to it being uncomfortable, not wanting to deal with it, and it's just not in the pride. It's across the board. So it's hard to deal with. It's hard to really explain, like Michelle said, what is mental health? Mental health is everything. Everybody has a mental component, and that's my take on it. My take is everybody's gone through some kind of trauma. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care how much money your family had. Everybody's experienced something that has changed the way they think. And it's not normal, whatever that means. And that impacts everything that they do. So we make decisions based on our experiences. And sometimes our experiences are so dysfunctional, makes our decision-making dysfunctional. That makes, right? So I'm with you, we all have a component. We all walk this world with mental health issues. And I won't call it an issue, just mental health impacts. How about that?
I like that.
Mental health impacts.
But also I want to say that we need to get away from blaming the patient, because if there's a physical illness, most of the time patients aren't blamed.
Correct.
But if there is a mental illness, people think that the person has control over it, right? Like, you can stop that, just get up, stop being depressed, stop being anxious, just do this, just do that. Stop hearing the voices, right?
Which is actually the opposite, right? Like, you can stop eating carbohydrates so you don't have diabetes. You can actually stop doing some things.
And I want to think about, it's not something that somebody has control over. So when we're saying stop being depressed or stop being anxious, yes, you can learn some coping skills and you can improve the situation, but
who says that to people? Stop being depressed.
Oh,
well, I'll say this in grief, because as I experienced grief after I lost Ujana, a lot of people were like, you just got to get over it. You got to feel better.
That's fighting words.
I mean, but I'm just saying, and it's taking too long. You can't still be upset. You can't, so
people said that to you,
huh?
People said that to you?
Oh yeah, people said that to me.
Because they were uncomfortable with the situation.
Yeah, you're uncomfortable. Yeah.
Just say children get spanked because they're crying. If you're sad, you want to cry, let me give you something to cry about. Right? I mean, how many times have we heard that, right? And so we don't know, so then our children become afraid to tell us what's going on with them.
Right.
Like when I was talking about the stats earlier, like 1 in 5 people, 50% of the people that have lifelong mental health issues, they experience symptoms before the age of 14. So that's on us as parents, right? So 50% of people that have lifelong mental health issues experience symptoms before 14. 75% experience symptoms before 24, right? So that could be the onset. And usually if you have a mental illness, the onset is around age 24, right? So what are we doing as parents? How are we helping the young children? Because by not talking about it, by not doing anything, we're exaggerating the problem. And then what happens is we wonder why we have these drug issues and things like that. A lot of people are self-medicating because they don't know how to talk about their feelings. They don't know how to regulate their feelings. They don't know who to go to. Their parent, if they do go to somebody, they don't get help because we sweep it under the carpet, or it's something that we don't talk about, or we just have to suck it up. And then they're suffering in silence when it doesn't need to be like that.
I'm gonna challenge you, Evie, because when you say that, it makes sense. But let me tell you this, a lot of parents aren't trained to even understand that, right? But as I'm thinking, as a doctor, I talk to and I'm just saying this because most kids, not all kids, they are seen by healthcare professionals. They are, and not taking the blame from the parents, but if a parent doesn't recognize it, right? Counselors at schools should be trained. Healthcare professionals have to be trained to identify, because I talk about that with all of my patients. I talk about that with my parents. I talk about mental health, especially, I ask little questions like, how are you doing in school? Is it worse in school? What happened? You need to go, but what I say that is,
hold up. You talk about this, but you're a different kind of doctor. My kids never had a doctor that asked those kind of questions.
That's the problem, because the thing is, if you as a parent, you're a knowledgeable parent, right? A parent may not legitimately know what's going on with their child. And if the child starts acting out, they don't even, I'm trained to know if your grades start dropping, you start acting out, that child might have been touched, right? I'm just saying, right? I'm trained to know that. Parents, parents don't know why all of a sudden your child went from making A's to F's.
All I keep thinking about right now is how come in school, in high school, people aren't learning about this type of thing instead of like geology. It's like, this is like stuff that like parenting type classes, talking about mental health, talking about relationships. Oh my God, imagine if we as young adults had classes that we had to take. A lot of us would learn some things.
So much.
That's all. I mean, it's just like you said, people don't know what they don't know. Looking back, I have a 13-year-old now, but looking back, I'm like, I made so many mistakes, you know? I wish I didn't do this. I wish I would have done that, but then you live and you learn, right? But it's like, how can people understand and learn these things before they maybe do some damage to a child or to a relationship, you know, a friendship, a mate, a parent, you know, like there's so many, there's so much damage that we do that we don't even realize that we do it.
We don't. We don't. As parents, it's no one gives you a manual.
No one gives you a manual, but this is definitely run by a white male dominant world, right? So it's not about highlighting the imperfections, whatever they think are the imperfections. So they're not going to talk about that. It is about geology. It is about all those other things that are external, things that they think they can control or to report on. But when you start to be reflective of person, it makes people feel less in control. And so that's not something that people want to celebrate. Michelle, when we were in college, there was a person, I'm not gonna say his name, but we went to school and he obviously had like some kind of mental health disorder. And when we were out this past week, my dog got mental health issue. He in the back barking over there. So giving me mental health issues. So, and it was a young guy that I think he liked Michelle and another person. I think he liked Gina. And he would just walk like with his arm, like walk like Michael Myers. Like he was like void of emotion kind of thing. And he would just like present him, you know who I'm talking about, right? He would present himself and all of a sudden he'd be just standing there. We'd be like, what the hell? But he was probably autistic, right? And back then we didn't know, we just knew he was like different.
Oh.
Right. And so if we understood that and had it normalized, we'd be like, oh, that's so-and-so, he's all right. And we eventually had to come to know who he was, but it was very scary in the beginning. And just imagine how offensive we were to him, you know, just because he was being himself and we didn't understand. Exactly. Until later on, it was like, oh, that's just him. But
and it is scary to people.
Yeah, and he was scaring.
People think it's scary because you feel uncomfortable. And it's just different than like if someone, it's just scary. It can be.
Conversations because people are scared, especially when you talk about somebody on the schizophrenia spectrum. You know, everybody thinks that they're violent, crazy. You know, there's all these negative stigmas. But when you look at school shootings and all this violence, they're not acts committed by somebody that has schizophrenia, right? But a lot of times that's what we think, you know, like our mind goes there. And so I think that it's really important to continue to have these conversations so that we can talk about it, so that people can learn. Uchenna, you brought up a great point about children acting out. And a lot of times we just call them bad kids because they're acting out. Their grades are dropping, so they must be doing drugs, or they must be, you know, they're bad, or they're being lazy or whatever. But we're not looking at the underlying factors. And maybe another show we can talk about trauma and the impact that trauma has on one's brain, you know, especially when you're young and you experience trauma, how that can increase the likelihood for you to have anxiety disorders and other mental health issues later on in life. And so there's a lot of research that shows it's not that somebody can control acting this way or that way. You know, when you're looking at brain development and things, showing that there's some biological components to mental health, to mental illness, right? So as we wrap up, maybe some DEN directives. What can we do to fight the stigma surrounding mental health or people seeking mental health? Because we know that especially people of color are less likely to seek mental health services. What can we do?
Well, I'm going to say this as a physician. I'm going to say this to my other healthcare providers, that you should have these conversations when you're with your patients and their parents. If it's a child, you should you should delve into it. Don't get stuck. They came in for, and I'm making this up, but they came in for back pain, but you realize there's something else going on. Don't get stuck on the physical illness or physical problems. You can shift gears, because you may be that one person that says something and they're able to express, that person's able to express. So I mean, I can even take that into the world as a friend, as a parent. If someone seems sad, if you feel it, say something. Just give them an opportunity, because that may be the opportunity, and I mean this with all my heart, from them getting it out and not internalizing it and harming themselves, either by physical harm, killing themselves, dying by suicide, or like driving into substance use. So I just say, if there's some inkling that you have for a family member, a friend, your child, your patient, say something. Don't just let it sit there. Say something.
And piggybacking off of what you said, Uchenna, because I was kind of thinking along the same lines, but definitely being an ear to listen and to make people close to you, at least you can touch them, the people closest to you, that you're there for them to listen. Then also let them know it's okay. I mean, what you're feeling, other people feel, to try to get it in their mind that it is normal. They're thinking it's not normal. I'm crazy. I'm something. I'm this, I'm that. You're not. A lot of people feel it. They're just not talking about it. Right. So be an ear to listen. Like you said, if they can get something out, though they may feel better, but also just try to express that it's okay. It's normal to have these feelings, and you're okay. You know, you can get through it, or, you know, just talk. If you need to talk to somebody, more of a professional, talk to a professional, but that it's all right.
Yeah, we really
So
need
my
to
directive is going to be that my family, we've decided to have quarterly meetings, and as a psychotherapist, right, we are talking about it, making it just very friendly. We've been doing these sessions like mental health. I've been doing like mental health 101, just normalizing it in family reunions. So we had these seminars. So for the last 2 family reunions, we've been having that. So we decided to have these seminars. And so from a very family level, just having conversations about it, so it doesn't sound so, that it doesn't make it so distant, that it makes it very present. So if we talked about, oh, so and so was diagnosed with this, right, or this person was sick, the same thing. Well, this person's experiencing some depression. So what could we do? How do we support them? How do we help them? So just talking about it, normalizing it is
That's
something that I
wonderful.
would
You're
suggest.
doing that, Sherelle. And you know what? On to add to that. So, and also being that person in the family, because I've heard this in families, like family talking about other family members. Oh, they did this and this and that. They, talking. So you be the person and be like, no, now, they're going through this, and like, don't let them keep making it like it's something terrible,
Correct.
So standing up for the other people in that group, or other people in general.
There are a lot of services that are available. So I think that's great. Like, Uchenna said, if you're a provider, if you're a doctor, making sure that you're asking those questions, and also to recognize that it is okay to seek professional help. That's a good thing. It takes strength to get help, to improve yourself. Sometimes some people may need medication, and that's okay. You take medication for physical illnesses, you can take medication for mental illnesses, and just being okay. We have to give ourselves that grace, and we have to feel okay with, how can I live my best life? And in order to do that, I might.
Evie, Evie, I'm just so glad that you said that takes strength. Those people, right? Because they're thinking they're weak. No, you're strong, because you're standing up for yourself. You're trying to help yourself. You're trying to make yourself better. So that is totally like, I'm glad you said that. Because yes, they're exhibiting strength.
Yes. Right. Yes. And we need to encourage that and promote it. So I think for us, for the 4 of us, that's something we can commit to doing. Advocating for people to live their best lives and to encourage them to take care of their mental health.
So make sure you join us
in the den,
where places don't make you feel at home.
People do.
Bye.
Bye.